Hello, my name is Michael James. I'm a social worker and therapist with Hope Christian Counseling. And as a social worker and therapist, as a Christian and African American and father of three, I felt compelled to speak in regards to the recent killings and disenfranchisement of African Americans across our country. Many of us, not just African Americans, but all of America's races and ethnicities, are really trying to process the pain, the anger, and the stress of this moment. I also wanted to speak to the recent, the subsequent riots and civil unrest that's taking place as well. And so as we're trying to process all of these things, we're really trying to come to a place where we can find some meaning and purpose in all of this, that we can take something to better ourselves, to move forward, not just for our city, but for our families and for us as individuals as well. So the thing I think that we want and the thing we're looking for is what I like to call unity in diversity. You know, when you think about America, we're one of the most diverse countries in the world. And I think our hearts are longing and yearning for unity in that diversity. And I don't mean just unity in the sense of cohabitation, but unity in the sense that all of the best parts of our differences are coming together for some collaborative good that's going to better our society as a whole and us as individuals. So where we have peace within ourselves and peace amongst one another. And so I hope that this little, statement is just an encouragement to you, and just it might give us some ideas about how we can chart a path forward to that place of unity and diversity. And I think a good place to start is if we look back, like if we think back to in our past, to look back so that we can chart a path forward as to where we want to go. So if you would with me, think back to 1957. I know actually I can't think back that far, I'm not that old, but if we look to history, in January of 1957, we will see the birth of the Southern Christian Leadership Conference. And this multi-ethnic, interfaith network of churches and community leaders led the paramount civil rights movement. And I use that word paramount because it was the civil rights movement that compelled our government to apply the promises of the 14th and 15th Amendments to all Americans. Some would even say the 13th Amendment. You see, these amendments were ratified in the 1800s, but they did not actually, African Americans did not actually begin to experience the benefit of those liberties until 100 years later in the 1900s, 1960s. So the civil rights movement was profoundly impactful for our nation. The betterment of it cannot be understated. The government-sanctioned legal doctrine of separate but equal and the state and local government practices of Jim Crow came to an end. So it was through the civil rights movement that we didn't just find benefits for African Americans, but the Civil Rights Acts also helped future Latin, Caribbean, European, Asian, Jewish Americans, and LGBTQ Americans as well. So the benefits of the Civil Rights Movement cannot be understated. The Civil Rights Acts also gave us an opportunity to show the world that we had the determination to live by the convictions of our Constitution. So through lots of legislation, many decisions by our highest court, state and local governments enforced the law. With the aid of police departments, the laws were passed, and when necessary, the laws were enforced, and when necessary, the U.S. military came in and supported, and we found that we had abolished institutional segregation in American public life. So someone might be asking the question, given all of those accomplishments, if we think about the Civil War and the accomplishments of that, we think about the accomplishments of the Civil Rights Movement, what is there left for us to do? Well, unfortunately, we just take a look and we'll see, despite the monumental achievements in American history of those times, the ethnic and racial tensions are still at a fever pitch. So all we got to do is just take a closer look at that history that I just mentioned a few moments ago. And as we look at it, we can see the work that still needs to be done. You see, in truth, during the Civil Rights Movement, it was a minority of Americans that caused the majority of us to do the right thing. And even after the laws changed, state and local governments found it necessary to physically enforce the law. In many cases, the federal government had to step in with the U.S. military to protect citizens and their liberties when state and local governments refused to implement the laws of our Constitution. So see, we did accomplish something during the Civil Rights Movement, and it was great and meaningful. Through legislation, we changed the laws and people found a greater experience of their civil liberties. But we did not change hearts and minds. So today, contemporarily, every place that integration cannot be forced or is not overtly economically profitable is still segregated. Today, discrimination is illegal, and it's even a social faux pas. But if you talk to most Americans that live in proximity to other people groups, they will tell you that their neighborhoods, their politics, their dinner tables, and their churches remain largely just as segregated as their grandparents and even their great-grandparents. So what do? It means that we need to ask ourselves some questions. Could it be possible that the civil rights movement accomplished everything that we set out for it to do? That it aligned our ideas with our policies, but it left the changing of hearts and minds to our generation? Could it be possible that right now the biggest problem is not institutions, and I'm talking about Congress and your state and local government. I'm even talking about the court system and police department. Could these not be the primary cause of our societal problems? Because these institutions are made up of people, us. And they're also created by people, us, because we elect the officials who hire the people that make up these institutions. Could it be that the real impediment to the change that we seek actually lies with you and me and our wills? What if the resolution that we really seek is more about individuals, more about everyday people and their everyday families, and the changes that they make with small interactions with how they interact with their neighbors and their local government? How we know the people that we walk past at the grocery store or the library, how we invite people into our homes. What if these things could make the biggest impact, the most effectual change for our society? So this place of unity and diversity that we want to get to, I don't think it's going to be, as we try to answer those questions, I don't think we're going to get there through the normal social compromises if we try to seek balance or some kind of contract. You know, we don't need an equation of 2 + 2 = 4. We need an equation of 2 + 2 = 8. We need to be able to get more out than we put in. So we're looking for a synthesis of all of our differences, the best of who we are, our culture, our political ideologies, our personality styles and differences, all to come together for some betterment for our society. So I'd want to leave you with just 3 things that I'd like you to consider and think about. Think about these things and doing these things. These are like action steps that you could take that could help yourself and your community and your family achieve that place of unity and diversity that we're all looking for. Because I think in my heart, I know that most of all, I want to be loved. And I think we all want that too. You know, the thing about unappeased offenses, they impede forgiveness and they prevent fellowship. And I think our hearts collectively are longing for that fellowship. If unappeased offenses minimize the opportunities in our society for opportunities for acceptance, belonging, connectedness, and security. And so when we resolve those conflicts within ourselves first, and then let it spread out to other people, I think we'll find that place of unity and diversity that we're looking for. So the first thing that I want to share with you guys, and you'll see the words up on the screen, so if you find some of this compelling, maybe write it down. The first place we got to start is with ourselves. Now, as I say this, I want everyone to know that I'm not talking about any particular people group. Sometimes there are words in our society that have become like code words. So if I talk about victimization or if I talk about personal responsibility or guilt, That's not directed to any particular people group, because the truth is that all Americans, whatever your ethnicity or race is, these things can apply to us, that we need to process and rethink these. And so the first thing is that we start with ourselves, and that we consider this. Although we typically see ourselves as innocent bystanders or victims of circumstance, the truth is that each of us has great power to affect positive change by focusing on ourselves rather than other people or things. We can push back against the decisions we make that work against us, our tendency to act only enough to mitigate rather than solve our problems, and our tendency toward apathy and indifference. This is the power that we get when we apply things, first look at ourselves rather than others or rather than some other institution. So consider doing this. Take some time for self-reflection. Perhaps find a mentor or even counselor to talk to. We need space to open up within our own assumptions about ourselves and our understanding and perpetration of and experience with victimization, personal responsibility, prejudice, and guilt. Here's the second thing. Become willing to take a long look again at our American history. There's lots of parts of it that are foreign to us, or maybe we're unfamiliar with. Here are just a few subjects that I think we could benefit from taking a look at again. Slavery, American wealth development in light of slavery, neo-slavery, the Great Migration, Reconstruction, Jim Crow, and the Civil Rights Movement. If any of those themes seem foreign to you, we could take time out to learn about them as much as we can. Go into your community and join community civic history classes on the subject of race and society. And here's the last thing that I would leave you with. To join discussions with other people with different viewpoints than your own. Sit down with Christians, non-Christians, Muslims, the irreligious and the religious, people that are Republicans and Democrats, and have some conversations. Yes, it would be good if these conversations are mediated. So wherever possible, participate in identity conflict resolution discussions held by your local government, social service agencies, and churches. So I hope you found this beneficial in some way. I hope you may have found it encouraging. And I just want to tell you that God loves you. And my prayer is for you, the best for you, your family, and our country. God bless.